From previous lectures, we learned certain givens. Number one, first of all, the Jewish calendar and the solar must correlate the solar and lunar years. They have to learn from the pasuk Shamor et Chodesh HaAviv, which is found in Dvarim Tet Zayin Aleph, Deuteronomy 16:1. So, unlike the Muslim calendar, the Jewish calendar, which is based upon the moon, the Chodesh, has to be correlated at some point with the solar year, which has the seasons in order so that Pesach, the holiday of Passover, falls in the spring and that the holiday of Sukkot falls in the fall. So that's number one. The solar and lunar years have to be correlated. So, when the Jewish calendar was formulated by the Nasi Hillel, back I think it was 359 CE, we came to the conclusion that within a 19-year cycle, the Jewish calendar has 12 Shana Pshuta, meaning 12 simple years of 12 months each, and 7 Shana Me'uberet, 7 years of leap year in which we have an Adar Bet, a 13th month. So within a 19-year cycle, we have 12-month years and 7 13-month years. That's the second given. And that the average moled, the average time lapse between one moled to another moled, one new moon to the second new moon, is Kaftet Yudbet Tashtzag, 29 days, 12 hours, and 793 chalakim. And we spoke about the concept that the chalakim is 3.33 seconds, because if you take 3,600 seconds, which are the number of seconds in an hour, and you divide it by that by the 1,080 chalakim, the parts of an hour that was used in formulating the Jewish calendar, you come out to 3.33 seconds per chelak. Okay? Now, the modern solar year is calculated based upon the astronomical almanac for the year 2011 as 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. So a fun thing that we can do, which is also something that you have to be responsible for to be able to recreate what we're just about to do, is to see how closely the 19-year cycle, which correlates the length of the lunar year with the length of the solar year, in other words, derive out the length of the solar year from the 19-year cycle and see how it compares to what we know today based upon our current day instruments as to how long the solar year is. Now, let's convert the 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. Let's turn those into to chalakim, which is the language of comparison. Well, we've got our 365 days, that's the same in both languages. We have our 5 hours, which is the same in both languages. But we have our 48 minutes and 45 seconds. Okay, now, 48 minutes, okay, times 60 seconds per minute. In other words, because we're trying to get seconds. So 48, converting to chalakim, 48 minutes times 60 seconds equals 2,880 seconds. Now you take 2,880 seconds and you add the 45 seconds remaining, you come to a total of 2,925 seconds. And you divide that by 3.33 to achieve the chalakim, and you get 878 and some change chalakim. So let's knock off the change and just keep it at 878 chalakim, because we're talking about a mean anyway. So we're talking about the astronomical mean year, currently computed for 2011, of 365 days, 5 hours, and 878 chalakim. Now, let's derive the length of the solar year from our 19-year cycle and see how far or how close that is to the 365 days, 5 hours, and 878 chalakim, which was computed by the Astronomical Almanac for 2011. So the Astronomical Almanac for 2011 converted into halakim has a solar year length of 365 days, 5 hours, and 878 halakim. Okay, so now let's derive the length of the year from the Jewish calendar. You said that in every 19-year cycle, we have 12 months, 12 years of 12 months. Pshuta. That's 100. So 12 years of 12 months is 144 months. Okay? And then you have 7 years of 13 months. We're trying to figure out the number of months, okay, in the 19-year cycle. So 7 times 13 is 91 months. You take 144 months of the Pshuta years and 91 months of the Muberet years, and you've got a total of 235 lunar months over a 19-year cycle. Okay? So now, applying that to the monthly molad length of 29 days, 12 hours, and 793 halakim, 235 months of 29 days equals 6,815 days. 235 months of 12 hours is 2,820 hours. 235 months of 793 halakim comes out to 186,355 halakim. Okay? Now, so we start out with our 6,815 days, but the 2,820 hours, turning those, getting whatever days we can get out of that, is divided by 24, which yields 117 days and 12 hours. So you take that 117 days and add that to the 6,815, so you got a total of 6,932 days, and you're left over with 12 hours. But what do you do with the 186,355 halakim? Well, you divide, to convert those into as many hours as you can, you divide those by 1,080, which is the number of halakim per hour, and that yields 172 hours, 595 halakim. Okay? Now, so you take that 172 hours, add to that the 12 hours from the previous line, so that gives you 184 hours over the course of the 19 years. Okay, but we want to get as many days as we can out of that, so we divide that 184 hours by 24, and that yields 7 days and 720 halakim. So that 7 days is going to be added to our total of 6932. So that's going to yield to us 6,939 days. Okay. Now the 595 the 720 halakim that were just yielded by our last computation are added to the 595 halakim that we got when we divided the 186,355 by 1080. That yields us 595. Well, you take that 595 and you add that to the 720, and that gives you 1,315 halakim, which is more than 1 hour. Okay? So you subtract 1,080 from that, and that gives you 1 hour and 235 halakim. So, in 19 years yields 6,939 days, because we took the 6,932 that were yielded before, and we added to that the 7 days that were just yielded a moment ago by taking the 184 hours divided by 24. So we've got 6,939 days, 1 hour, and 235 halakim over a period of 19 years. So now, let's divide all of that by 19. Now, you could, if you wanted to, is you could take the 6,939 days and divide that by 19, and then the 1 hour by 19, and the 235 halakim by 19. But then you lose a bit in the rounding. And but by the same token, you can turn the entire 19 years, convert that all into halakim and divide that by 19. But if you do that, you'll lose a lot less in rounding, but it's too big for my calculator. So what I decided to do was turn it all into hours. Okay, that's kind of a middle-of-the-road path. We're losing something on rounding, but it's not as much as if we were to divide 6939 by 19 years. Okay, so you take your 6,939 total days, and you times that by 24 hours per day, and that gives you over a 19-year length, 166,536 hours. But remember, we calculated an hour of remainder before, so you have to add 1 hour there. So it gives you over a 19-year period 166,537 hours. Okay. Now, if you divide that by 19 to find out how many hours in the year, you come out with 8,765.1052 hours per year, and then we'll convert that fraction into halakim. But at least one thing we know for sure, that we've got 8,765 hours per year. Okay, so if you want to convert that, into days, and we might as well just take the entire number, including the fraction. You take 8,765.1052 and divide that by 24 hours, in other days. That yields 365.21271 days. And I did it that way as opposed to just taking off the 8,765 because in order to reduce the rounding error. Okay, so now we have 365 days, 0.21271. Okay, but now let's turn that fraction of 0.21271. Let's turn that into hours, into halakim. So we take 0.21271, we have our 365 days, we put that to the side. We take our 0.21271 times 24 hours in a day, and that gives you 5.10504 hours. Okay, so now we've got our 5 hours, and we're left with our 0.10504 fraction of an hour. Now, you know, in halakim language, there were 1,080 halakim per hour. So if you take your fraction of 0.10504 times 1,080, that yields 113 halakim. But wait a second. We can't use that number just yet because don't forget, we calculated 235 halakim over 19 years. So we have to divide that 235 halakim by 19 years, and that yields about 13 halakim. I know that the rounding comes out less than 50%, but the fact is that the rounding over here by the 113 also comes a bit less than 50%. When you add those two fractions together, it actually comes out to greater than 50%. So I added the one chalik over here. It works out in the rounding. So in any case, so this 113 has to be added to the 13 of the 235 halakim over 19 years, which is divided by 19, which yields 126 halakim. So the length of the solar year derived from the Hebrew calendar over the 19-year period is 365 days, 5 hours, and 126 halakim, as compared to the currently calculated solar year length from the Astronomical Almanac of 2011, 365 days, 5 hours, and 878 halakim. The difference between the two calculations is 878 minus 126 is 752 halakim. Now, to turn that into seconds and minutes, you're talking about 752 halakim at 3.3 seconds per chalik. That yields 2,482 seconds. Divided by 60 seconds per minute, you're talking about 41 and a third minutes, which is about 20 seconds. 41 minutes and 20 seconds difference. So think about that. That the solar year length as, am I in the picture? The solar year length as derived from the calendar, which was created 1800 years ago by the final Sanhedrin of the Jewish people. What, in 359 CE, by Hillel II, the son of Yehuda Nasiah, created a calendar that you can derive a solar length, which is but 41 and a third minutes different than the solar year length as computed by current instruments in the Astronomical Almanac of 2011. That is very cool.